And hello, everyone, and welcome to this special midweek episode of Media Musings. I see we had Dave, or Critical Cripple, in the chat, and we have Doc Fearsome also in the chat. Hello to you and whoever might be lurking, and those who will be watching in the future. Today, we will be talking about The Big Lebowski. And before we get into the discussion itself, I'm trying to get these media questions, this media questions thing, to actually be a thing. So, but, so this week's question: in the television edit of The Big Lebowski, which mountain range does Walter rant about?
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen the TV edit version. I've always only seen the full version. So
yeah. Gonna give the chat a couple seconds to maybe answer. Let's see.
It's important to remember that at the time that the film was made, it's basically broke a record for the amount of F-bombs in a film. So, considering the fact that it's a television edit, it had to be really creative with it.
Yeah. So, well, I know, Creighton knows it.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite blunders in a television ever. And so basically, the original line in the movie, right, is this is what happens when you're in the ass, And so they decided to change it to this is what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I've seen the TV edit either. I just know that. Like, I read it in a list of weird censorships or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of them, they just change it to, depending on the context, they might just change it to just a blank, and that's always, really difficult to watch because you can see what they're saying, you know, and that video feels like there's just something wrong with the film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think when it... because I said I've never seen the TV edit of this thing, but I'll just move to one side. It probably won't show up too well here, but it's on the wall behind me there. That's kind of like my altar to the dude. Now I don't know how well that shows up on the screen here.
Yeah, hold on.
You could make me full screen for a sec. So you see that picture of the dude, Walter, and Donnie, and underneath it, I have a few of my bowling trophies. And right here in front of me, because I brought this out a few days ago anticipating this, here is my certificate of ordination. I don't mind putting my full name on because people know my name anyway, so I'm not doxing myself. So my certificate of ordination from the Church of the Latter-day Dude. So I am an ordained dudist, and maybe we could get into dudism a little bit later in the stream, perhaps. But
I
think we need to touch on it.
So, firstly,
The phenomenon of the Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems to me, at least, that the Big Lebowski is very much like the pineapple pizza or black licorice jelly bean of movies, in that you either really like it or you hate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also say as well, go a little bit. This is one of those films that I think gets better on repeat viewings. Now, the first time I ever watched this, I really didn't get it. And okay, there was one or two funny jokes, but I didn't really get it at all as a film. And maybe it was a few years later when I went back to it, tried to go through it again, and realised this is it's just a brilliant film. And I think the more I've watched it, the more I appreciate it. And I think it is one of those films that is better for people on repeat viewings, that you may not necessarily get it the first time you watch it. But repeat viewings, it's like, okay, I get it. I kind of get it now,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. If I remember right, the first time I saw the movie, with exception maybe to, like, the marmot scene and some of the dream sequences, I kind of thought it was just like a basic neo-noir drama. I didn't really even see it as a comedy because I was just so kind of intrigued by, like, the visual style of the film. What's so interesting about it too is that it almost kind of parallels Chinatown in the way that it's like, here's this movie that has this perfect neo-noir trapping, but rather than it's, all dimly lit, dark, with the shutter shades and everything, what we have instead is like sunny Los Angeles. And there's a lot of sequences at night, but they're always neon lit, So it is a bright film while being very dark in theme.
Yeah.
If I were to, and I'm not sure if this is actually a term or not, but if I were to slide it into a genre, I'd call it an acid noir.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an interesting concept for a genre.
Yeah.
It's not one I've heard before.
Well, it is. I think in a sort of, in a weird way, kind of in a class of its own as a movie. That it's a comedy. It has got an element of noir to it, and obviously an element of the kind of like as you said, the acid trip kind of thing, and the bit art house in a few ways.
See, from what I remember, and I meant to rewatch it and I didn't, because I haven't seen it for about 15 years, and I've only seen it the once.
I'm gonna apologise right now here, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this to Jen a few times throughout this stream just to annoy her. Shut the fuck up, Jenny.
No, but I was going to say, I would have thought it was more along the lines of Clerks.
Well,
oh yeah, I can see that.
We've got an echo going somewhere here.
Yeah, does someone have the
Correct. Do you have the stream playing in the background or something? Because we were getting an echo a second ago.
Yeah.
Is it gone?
Yeah, I think it is.
It is to have, yeah.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting film, even for like the Coen brothers, because I would say it's sort of in the same league as Raising Arizona, but not exactly. It sort of has similar themes as some of their early, like, straightforward noir films, like Miller's Crossing or Blood Simple. But it really is a film all of its own, and from their own admission, that really is just because they were doing it to entertain themselves. They were like, let's imagine a scenario where some of our best friends are thrown into, this really strange, Rathbone kind of like situation. What's interesting to me about this movie too is the Coen brothers often, by complete accident, fall in parallels with the films of Paul Thomas Anderson. And like this is an earlier example where there's a lot of beats that are very similar to Boogie Nights, even up to and including like sharing cast members like the Julianne Moore and stuff. And later they would comment on it because they ended up filming No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood in the same town at the same time. Paul Thomas said that they were staying at the hotel, found which room they were in, knocked on their door, woke them up in the middle of the morning and said, "This town is big enough for the both of us." And so I think it's just like the scenario though, because while there are films that kind of have similar aesthetics or similar themes that kind of came out around the same time or were inspired by it, nothing is the same. And when a movie tries to be like The Big Lebowski, it's very obvious, and it kind of turns me off. Like there was that one Paul Rudd movie, Our Idiot Brother. And there's that movie, Tim Robbins, Leaves of Grass, I think it's called. They just, they fall really short because the Coen brothers were pulling from real people and real scenarios, and then trying to twist them into a very strange narrative style.
Well, that's a very good point, because like The Dude, for example, is based on Jeff Dowd, who's like a filmmaker, but was also like a very political activist in in the anti-Vietnam sort of movement. And The Dude was loosely based on Jeff Dowd. I mean, obviously the dude's name, first name is Jeff, similar to mine actually. But hey, all the best people are called Jeff, But what I found about really, especially the two main, shall we say, protagonists of the film, is you had two guys who I think were somewhat out of their own time in a way, that they were both in their own ways stuck in the late 60s, early 70s. But because if you really look at, like, say, The Dude and Walter, they're such different characters, and you'd think if you look back in that period, that obviously The Dude is quite clearly, he is the hippie archetype, and probably protest against the war. The Dude's kind of happy as long as he gets to bowl, smoke pot, drink the occasional White Russian. Walter, he's obviously the vet, and he's very. It's kind of weird that these two guys are friends, but I think the thing they have in common is that they're both two guys who are stuck in a previous era. But Walter's very much stuck back in Vietnam, where he was a vet, and The Dude, I think, in his own way, he's kind of stuck in his own time as well. And I think maybe because that's the obvious thing when you really look at the film is, well, why would these two guys be friends? And even at times their friendship really gets tested through this, because the Dude's like, number of times he's like, "F you, Walter," But I think maybe that's the kind of the connection with the two characters, that they are very much. I mean, this film is set in the early 90s, yet you got the two main characters who are stuck in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's like one of the main elements of The Big Lebowski that makes it so pertinent, is the fact that it kind of, in my perspective, which is kind of is inspired a lot by like certain postmodernist philosophers like Gilles Deleuze, it represents the fact that the 60s were this era where people felt like they could take control again, and that it was all about autonomy, but also intertwined with this is all of this trauma. Like the Walter has the trauma of being in Vietnam, and the Dude has a little bit more literal trauma of brain damage, basically, from overexposure to drugs. They're both kind of floating through this chaotic world of the 90s, where there's all of these world affair troubles that nobody can really wrap their head around, and they basically are bound by the fact that they are kind of they went from being people who felt like they had autonomy and control of their world into a world where they had no control and they were aging and kind of dejected.
And
and what I find really interesting about social setting is like the fact that they're always mining things around them in the dialogue. So like the dude, for instance, later said, "This aggression will not stand, man." And it sounds like he's just saying like a hippie line the first time you see it, but then later in rewatches, it's like straight from George Bush.
It's George Herbert Walker Bush quote about the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam, which, I mean, obviously this movie was made in 1998, but it's set during a period of the Gulf War. Yet certainly the two main characters in this, they're almost stuck in their own era. And when you hear the dude say this, like, this aggression will not stand, man, which is, again, this movie is it's got so many, it's so quotable. That's another thing we're going to see with this movie. Like, as you see, we got it going on the bottom of the screen now. The dude abides, which is like the one of the very last lines of the film. And I mean, it's always kind of weird as well that you've got this other character who only really comes in as the narrator, the stranger, and he's almost stuck in another time of like the old West almost. You kind of feel, and he's the weird guy who's just kind of narrating this, who appears from time to time, and in a certain way, you kind of wonder what purpose he actually serves in the movie, but yet in some way, it kind of works.
Yeah. But you take these, people who are like who are the archetype of they were lost in the late 60s, early 70s. Then not only are they having to deal with the quote unquote modern life of the 90s, but then they're also tossed into this topsy-turvy neo-noir plot about a false kidnapping and nihilists and ransom demands and pornography directors and
and modern art as well. Because I definitely get the feelings that Maud was sort of based on people say like Yoko Ono or whatever, of that modern art kind of So I mean, and this is the weird thing about it, is that the dude is thrust into this thing completely against his kind of will. Really, he's not. He's just kind of happy with his life. Like, okay, he doesn't. In a lot of ways, you could say, oh, well, he's a dosser, he's a bum, whatever. Doesn't work, but he's just happy as long as he can drink a few White Russians, smoke a few joints, and go bowling. If he can do it, that's bliss to him. That's happiness to this guy. He's more than happy with that kind of life. And in a weird way, it's like, well, you can kind of find happiness in like the very simple sort of pleasures of life, really. Like, which is what the dude's kind of, the dude's more than very well content if he can just do that sort of thing. He's thrust into this really against his own will, and initially because of a case of mistaken identity, he's thrust into this weird kind of adventure, which Walter which obviously involves the money, stolen money, a kidnapping, which then eventually turns out to be a fake kidnapping, and you think really the only thing he actually really wanted was to get his rug cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
That was all he was asking for,
Yeah.
Well, that's the perfect thing. Is I feel like that really comes down to the thesis of the film. Is that we're creatures of circumstance, and the world is filled with all of these absolutely absurd and like frankly terrifying scenarios that we may just find ourselves in one day, and really all we can do is just fuck it, dude, let's go bowling. And what's interesting though is that he's a man of like narrow focuses, but it's also his narrow focuses that thrust him into those scenarios, even though he's based on a character with all of these, you know, prior political investments, you know, and the character himself has that direct tie to Jeff Dowd in that they were members of the Seattle Seven. Like Jeff Dowd was a real member of that group who like occupied a campus in an anti-Vietnam protest. But yeah, no, that's part of what's interesting too is like he is so much in kind of this old world creature. You know, like you think about his connection to Creedence Clearwater Revival, who basically were one of the early bands in the 60s to like coin roots rock, where it's like, okay, we'll take this new, very electric, well, new by about 10 years, like very electric, hard form of music and combine it with all of this old country and rockabilly that we really love, you know? And then he's surrounded by people who are like members of Autobahn, which is like a Kraftwerk spoof, and then you know, Maud Lebowski and her modernist art. And then there's like that great action with Jackie Treehorn where he says, you know, the wave of the future, everything will be 100% digital. And dude says, oh, I still drink manually. And he says, oh, of course you do, you know, because you are this old world creature. You're a dinosaur.
Yeah.
It's just, it's specifically scripted.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, like I said, I've said this a number of times, and I think that is the central theme. Is that, you know, you got the main characters are people out of their time and place, really, and but they're kind of. It's not that, you know, they're kind of content with it though, as long as they can kind of do the things they enjoy, which, you know, it just basically involves bowling, beer, White Russian in the dude's case, and maybe smoke a joint now and again. They're very content with that. And you know, even as I said earlier, even though you'd never think, looking at the dude and Walter, that these two guys would ever be friends in any way whatsoever, because they, I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you look at the two of them, politically, they must have been on very different sides of the fence in that time and period, yet they bonded in some way, because in a way they're kind of, Walter through probably, and you could probably argue if Walter's got PTS or something, and you know that, you know, there's definitely fan theories that, I mean, Walter is very much stuck in his and if you look at that, it's like Walter almost equates anything in that film to Vietnam, and so, or finds a way of equating it to Vietnam in some way or fashion. You know, I mean, it's like the classic scene with where he just got upset about a guy who he thought had crossed over the foul line in a bowling game.
Yeah,
it's the gun out. Market zero. Market zero.
Yeah.
This is not Nam. There are rules here, you know.
Yeah.
And the dude's like, well, he looks okay. Maybe he stepped over the line a little bit. It's like, there are rules here. This is not Nam. Pulls the gun on the guy, and it's like, it's a game of bowling, you know. Which is, obviously with the bowling thing, Walter's way more serious about that competitively than the dude is, obviously. But
yeah.
Oh, and I think that's like the perfect representation of his character, because something that's kind of subtle in the film is that Walter Sojak's career is that he sells like home security devices. And so I think that's kind of like a clue into the fact that his character is that he is always under attack, and he's perceiving his world as something that's always closing in on him and attacking him. And then the dude is that perfect counterpoint where that literally is happening to him just by circumstance, by mistaken identity. People are coming in and, you know, beating the shit out of him and pissing on his rug and stuff. And he's left to literally just sit in it and be like, all right, I'm housebroken. And it's just like, it's a perfect dichotomy.
I mean, I mean, I think obviously that there's three. I suppose that you could argue there's three main protagonists, but throughout the film, like the third one, he's almost a little bit of an afterthought, and it's deliberately so. Is poor Donnie.
Yeah.
Well, every time he speaks or asks a question, he just gets shut the fuck up, Donnie.
Yeah.
And I've got to admit, I love sending that particular meme to Donald Trump, actually, and he has, which I'm sure
done it a few times.
I'm sure once he's no longer president, I'm going to be blocked because all the Donnie, you're out of your element kind of things I send to him. And he's just, you kind of feel a bit. You kind of feel it's a bit sad for him because he is kind of the afterthought in this little trio, really, in a sense. And until the end, when sadly Donnie passes away, and maybe they kind of realise how much he meant to him, sort of thing. And maybe it's kind of, Donnie's story arc is a bit sad in a lot of ways, I feel.
Why the fuck did you have to make it about Nom?
Yeah, even in a few, but even in Donnie's somehow Walter links it to fucking Vietnam.
Yeah, and manages to shame and embarrass Donnie just by blowing his ashes straight into the dude's face. Again. Yeah. Also, something that's interesting I've read in analysis of the film is that Donnie's the only one you see bowling of the three. And
really?
He's always, and he's always knocking these, strikes. And then that's how you tell that the downfall is coming is when he gets a
9 over on something on a frame, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He was. He kind of holds together. And then, of course, I mean, almost in a way, because when I first watched it, I was expecting a big bowling show off between the dude and Donnie and the Jesus, and we never got that. I was almost kind of expecting that was how the film was going to end the first time I watched it.
Well, there is no real conclusion to the film. It just kind of stops.
Yeah,
it's all these plot lines get set up and it just kind of stops.
Yeah,
which kind of makes it more of a true slice of life film than any other really slice of life film, because
very frustrating though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
shut the fuck up, Jenny. Sorry.
The red herring. They keep setting it up oh no, she's really kidnapped, and just Walter thinks that Walter's a nutcase, but it's like this red herring, and then by the end of the film, oh no, that's true. She really did just kidnap herself. And it's just while everything is so absurd and chaotic, it's also way more simple than the audience is led to expect.
Yeah. Though,
interesting.
Talking about how you gotta kind of rewatch it to pick up on different nuances. Reminds me how there's one line in particular that kind of changes how you see the rest of the Jesus arc in particular. And that line is, "It's been a rough day, and I hate the fucking Eagles, man." Because what song plays when Jesus is introduced? Yeah, it's a
Hotel California. It's a Spanish version. It's
a Spanish rendition of Hotel California by the Eagles.
Oh, and that's another really interesting addition to just the whole aspect of the film is the way T-Bone Burnett sets up the soundtrack. It's really, really interesting. Something a lot of people don't know is T-Bone Burnett actually was part of Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review tour. So he knows Bob Dylan closely. And when they were setting up the soundtrack for the film and they're trying to look for an opening number, he was like, well, how about a Bob Dylan song nobody cares about? And they're like, that's perfect for the themes of the film. And so he nabbed Man and Me off of New Morning. And then another thing is just like the scene where the dude has the new rug and he's kind of dancing while he's listening to or practicing his it's more it's Tai Chi, right? He's practicing Tai Chi on his new rug, and he's listening to all of his messages. Her Eyes Are a Blue Million Miles by Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band is playing. And I almost feel like that sets up his seeking out of Bunny Lebowski. She's the blue eyes that are a million miles. He thinks of her as so far away, and there's so much obscuring his path to her, and then ultimately she just falls right into his lap.
I mean, I do like. I mean, the soundtrack is awesome. I've got to say this. Now, I've got to say, in a way, it made me appreciate a band that I'd never really been much of a fan of before, but I kind of got very much an appreciation of Creedence Clearwater Revival off of this film. And yeah, again, a lot of it is again music that's kind of somewhat out of its own time in terms of when this film was released. Most of the soundtracks are stuff from the 70s, whatever, 60s, 70s, and some even earlier. If you think that's like the real opening part of the film,
Oh yeah.
Or and real quick, hey Tony and hello Ilya. Glad to see you in the chat. But that about the soundtrack kind of locks in the motif of the protagonists are men out of time, because while the film ostensibly takes place in the early 90s Gulf War era, the soundtrack is stuck in the 60s and 70s for the most part.
And another interesting thing they do to interject postmodernism as a theme of the conditioning of the 90s is a very tertiary character is the dude's landlord, and they go to give him notes on his dance quintuplet right before they go to try to shake the money out of the kid. What's interesting is he's performing it to The Rites of Spring by Stravinsky, and it's very strange that somebody's landlord is super invested with all of this modernist composition. It's kind of out there, and it kind of comes out of nowhere too. But my interpretation of that is that they're trying to establish the fact that here are these people with modern ideas who are put into a postmodern world, and all they can do is cope with it with these simple things. Another little nod to that is the dude has a really beaten up, unused, and seemingly half-read copy of Being in Nothingness by Jean-Paul Sartre on his nightstand in the scene where he's trying to help Maud conceive.
Well, unwittingly as well, trying to help Maud to concede. I mean, that moment when she's mentions that that's the whole purpose that she slept with him, and he's like, whoa,
Yeah. Increases.
But I found it really weird about that whole kind of the whole post-sex scene between them. It's really weird because at the same time she's more or less admits, she's just using him to kind of get pregnant, kind of thing, and just so I can have nothing to do. Yet at the same time, she's also asking him everything about himself after they've done the deed. It's it's really weird. I can't quite figure out Maud's thing with the dude in a way, because even after obviously she's got kind of what she wanted out of him, she's still really asking him about himself and seems very interested. But yeah, Maud is very much. I mean, she's like that one. She's I suppose this kind of something, you know, the one this sort of modern art kind of people, you know, quite a, kind of a Yoko Ono kind of type, you know.
Yeah, like Yoko Ono meets Jason Pollock or Jackson Pollock, you know, with the big splatters.
Yeah, or like Lydia Yuchevich or any of those other like feminist modern art people from like that period of history in like the early 90s. What I find most interesting about her is that she's kind of like the perfect synthesis of the femme fatale character, because there was like a part of feminist film analysis where they basically would watch films like Double Indemnity and The Big Sleep, and they would root for the femme fatale character and see, like, here's somebody who's put in, you know, this patriarchal society with all of these impositions as a woman, but they use the those impositions for their advantage. And so Maud does that in a literal sense because she is a feminist and she talks about those theories as she's basically manipulating all of the characters with her femininity. It's just really well crafted. I don't know. One of the things that I find so interesting about the movie is that it's just like, you know, this triptych of all these strange things. It's like the Garden of Earthly Delights, you know, and because of that, the viewer can always kind of impose their own interpretation of what the film's trying to tell you, and part of you really wants there to be a metaphor there that you impose on it, and in a way that that is kind of like the perfect thing, is like, you know, you can't do that in the real world. And so here's this slice of life that sets it up like it's like this heavily entangled narrative that you know you're struggling to understand the whole time, and then you can't. And so many fans impose like these different fan theories on it. Like there's one I've heard about where it's Alice in Wonderland, and that one I don't quite follow too well. What I really like, and it makes sense, but what I follow more is that, you know, maybe it can be a metaphor for Camus' philosophy, because what we have is the bowling ball is the perfect symbol for the myth of Sisyphus. You know, you're rolling it and it's coming back, and you're rolling it and it's coming back, but they're perfectly resigned to that. They're perfectly comfortable with that. They like it. But then, in a way, in the real world, outside of that, you know, simulacrum, we have a character who dies. It's something much like suicide. His heart gives out on him when he faces the absurdity of the world. We have a character who inflicts order, and he's constantly inflicting order in Walter Sojak, and he believes that there's rules, you know. And then we have a character who's perfectly okay with there not being rules, and perfectly okay with the world being a completely meaningless place. And he is the perfect absurdist hero in a way, just because of the fact that he has that copy of Being a Nothingness, because Albert Camus and Sartre started as best friends and ultimately became rivals. And so the fact that he started this book and then discarded it is almost like a nice little visual clue. But again, the film is made in a way to make you want to impose these interpretations when none of them will really stick.
Yeah. Like another interpretation could be the whole thing's about the battle of the sexes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. You know, because...
Yeah.
You know, what with the threats to the dudes Johnson and Jackie, you know, and Jackie Treehorn's premiere, you know, what's the word? You know, his the work that he's known for,
right?
Yeah.
And also a lot of phallic imagery, like in the joints that he's smoking. Every time you see the dude smoking a joint, it's not a full one. It's like it's a little roach. It's like a stub, and so that could be Freudian phallic imagery for the fact that he's sort of defeated.
And then his trippy dream sequence where he's being chased by the scissors.
Yeah, which mirrors a painting Maud did. You can see it in the first scene when he goes to her studio, up in the top left corner of the screen, when it's the counterpoint shot facing Maud. It is a painting of giant silver black scissors on a red background.
Yeah. And, on the other hand, Bunny kidnaps herself, and Maud is all about the yonic symbolism.
Certainly. And then, there's it also has that sort of we've talked a lot about how it's old world characters. It really pushes forward that classic examination of LA as a place, and kind of the idea that it's just a place of chaos and people try to inflict order on it. And I think that's part of what makes the narrator such a good character, is because, think of it like the California Gold Rush that kind of established a lot of those cities as such a premier place, and the narrator is the one looking and describing the story, but he's doing it inadequately. He's an inadequate narrator, and he kind of steps in and out of the story, and he never has much more to say than why are you saying so many cuss words? And, the whole sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes the bear eats you line.
Yeah.
In a way, it kind of hints at the idea of manifest destiny and in the hypocrisy of establishing these great metropolises where everybody's just walking their own path and nobody, has any sort of organization to them.
So, I mean, with so many different ways to interpret the movie, I guess you could say, what the Big Lebowski really is about is it's about life. It's a big jumbled mess, and you try to make the best sense of it that you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see, I'm fascinated having listened to you guys go on about it, because having watched it once so long ago, I don't remember getting any of that from it at all.
Yeah.
I remember it as just I don't remember a lot of it. That's part of the problem. But I remember it kind of as just a light-hearted romp.
Oh, yeah. And it's
swearing, obviously.
It is one of the warmest films that they made, which is strange considering how much death and decay is kind of shown in the film. But it's you look at the Coen brothers filmography, and really the only films that they've made that are that lighthearted are Raising Arizona, which is about people kidnapping a baby, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is an Odyssey allegory. So it's it's strange to set up these kind of epic dark stories and then somehow make you feel comfortable in them in just those three films.
And actually, this Sunday, we'll be talking Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's strange, because it's I remember after watching The Big Lebowski, the next Coen Brothers film I saw was No Country for Old Men. And I was how is this the same set of directors other than, this pristine cinematography, basically? They've collaborated with the same cinematographer pretty much throughout their career. But it's shocking to think, these people who would adapt one of Cormac McCarthy's darkest works, maybe Save for Child of God and Blood Meridian, are also the people who made The Big Lebowski.
Well,
you could say that of a lot of directors, though, couldn't you? Where there's been so much variety in the type of stuff they've given us that it's hard to pick their thing just from what it is. I mean, and then you go to someone like Michael Bay and you go, no, that's a Michael Bay film.
Yeah. Scummer was going to say something.
Well, I mean, obviously based on all the different ways you can interpret this film. And I did say we're going to have to mention this at some point, that certainly was interpreted as one guy to enough where he made a religious philosophy off of this, Dudism. Which certificate of ordination from. And as much as you can say this is a parody kind of religion, a bit like the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster and that, yet there is some, they do actually take some actual things from ancient philosophy, mainly Taoism and perhaps a little bit of Buddhism as well. And obviously people know Jeff Bridges. He kind of is kind of into a bit of Zen kind of thing. I mean, in a way, I almost feel the dude is in a way is a bit of an extension of who Jeff Bridges actually is. If you've seen anything of him, and someone's come up with this idea of this whole religious philosophy based on the dude, and even though you can argue that it is a bit of a parody, light-hearted religion, yet there is some serious elements of things like Zen Buddhism or Taoism that are actually incorporated into this thing, which again is like something obviously this person who created this got from that film.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's interesting is that like it is the perfect just like the Big Lebowski represents old world ideas in a new world. The practice of Dudism mirrors that, because what we have in a secular society for a form of mythos basically is our pop culture, and so it takes these pop culture elements and analyzes these Eastern mystic themes within them, and then basically establishes this seriously large movement out of it. That does have absolutely valid philosophies and ideals to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's even books like, they've got the Dude Day Ching. Anyone's ever read, or I think the audio version is on YouTube, and I couldn't quote it exactly, but it would, a lot of it is sort of where they will use analogies from the movie in a sort of Eastern philosophy kind of way, like there was, for example, it'd be something along the times of sometimes you'll bowl a strike, you'll bowl a spare, you may even bowl a gutter ball, and sometimes someone will piss on your rug. However, it is throughout this, it is always important to stay dude, so it's always got like that Eastern philosophy kind of ring to it, even though they are basically using quotes from the movie, that if you don't remain dude, you're entering a world of pain. It'll in a weird way, as much as it is a parody, it in a weird way makes sense as well.
Yeah, no, and I like the fact that we do see the dude struggle with what goes on in the film. It's not like he's completely in nirvana throughout the film. He has to return to that.
No, not at all. Especially when he sort of for a while, when he genuinely thinks Bunny's been kidnapped, he's genuinely concerned for her. He's genuinely concerned that they're going to kill this poor girl or something if we don't. And even though in the end of the movie, it does turn out that his initial suspicion that she faked the whole thing was correct. Sorry for the spoilers, but hey ho. If you watch Media Musings enough, you'll notice spoilers. That's the thing, and sometimes it's like when he's getting stressed and like, you got the thing of Walter's like calmer than you, dude.
It's kind of reminding him of his own ethos throughout it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and what kind of puts it as once again, I'm gonna go back to like the more old time versus like modern art kind of themes of the movie, because the whole the whole framing device from the beginning is it's framed as an artsy, an old artsy movie that had been salvaged.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, in
Very
the
much
re-release with the introduction.
Yeah.
What's interesting, one time I saw this, I saw the Big Lebowski in a theater, and it didn't include the DVD box set introduction with the whole restoration narrative, talking about how it was released in Portugal as Mr. Marijuana and everything. And what they had in its place was this really strange, like, fake advertisement starring Walter Sojak. If I remember right, it was like an advertisement for like a beer or something. But it was presented like it was like a 1960s ad. And so that in itself was able to set it up as well. It's like anytime I've seen the film, there's always this like little introduction before the whole tumbling tumbleweed sequence where it's presented as like this lost and gone thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll change gears. And I mean, obviously, we've talked a bit about the main characters. I just wonder what people, what's perhaps some of the favourite sort of supporting characters in this film that people might like, or just out of interest.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's butler character.
Yeah,
I don't recall his name right.
So
he's great.
The actual aide to the actual Big Lebowski. Yeah.
Right. He's trying. He's one of those characters who's also trying to maintain order, but he has this nervousness about him. He's always stuttering through, trying to like show the dude all of the great achievements of the Big Lebowski, and he's just like walking around. He keeps touching shit, and he's just like, "Oh, room for one more," making sarcastic comments, and that nervous laughter. It's just so perfect.
So that the shot of the dude looking into the mirror that's done up like the Time Person of the Year cover.
Yeah, that's like
probably the best shot in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've made they've made kind of parodies of like the Obama presidential campaign poster out of that, out of that shot, where it just says, instead of hope, it says dude,
Yeah, or abide.
Yeah.
Oh man, when it and the narrator is a really great kind of
the stranger.
Sam Elliott,
right?
Yeah. Which if you're gonna have, to be honest, if you're gonna have an old cowboy as your kind of narrator, you couldn't do you could not get anyone better than Sam Elliott to do that.
Yeah.
If that's the whole thing. I mean, because that is kind of Sam Elliott,
Oh man, and from what I've heard, he really, really struggled with that role because he just could not get his head around what he was doing there, why he was saying any of the stuff, why the narration was necessary, and he kept just like looking at the camera. It was like, what the hell,
Well, I mean, that's a lot of things. Even though I enjoy the character in a sort of way, he doesn't really add it. He doesn't add anything to the plot at all. In a weird way, he doesn't really serve any purpose in a lot of ways. He's iconic. He's iconic character. In that movie, I mean, there's so many iconic kind of characters, and as I said, quote wise, this is one of the most quotable movies ever.
Yeah.
Oh, and if we're talking side characters, we cannot leave out the Nihilists. Some excellent cast there. Amy Mann being the girl with the toe cut off, and Flea is one of the Nihilists as well.
Yeah.
They definitely had a huge influence as music in the film.
Say what you want about National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, it's just so funny that a character like Walter Sojak is like so much more comfortable with Nazis than nihilists.
Yeah. Scummer Shabbos.
Yeah, I don't roll on Shabbos.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what Cynthia would think of him saying that.
Again, even that sort of line kind of goes to Walter being kind of stuck in his time where he clearly has not come to the terms of the fact that his wife has divorced him and moved on with someone else.
Yeah.
It kind of becomes apparent he married this Jewish woman who's since divorced and moved on to someone else, and yet he's still like stuck in that period where it's like where he's like, I'm abiding, even though he wasn't born Jewish, I'm abiding by all the Jewish holidays because because he married.
Oh man! And what's so strange too is like, what is Walter's politics? This guy is quoting Vladimir Lenin and like one of the leaders of the Zionist movement. Like you can't really get your head around it.
It's very. I would say with the Lenin quote, it was kind of very. Liberal, with a Lenin quote.
I mean, you could say the same thing about the dude because he's this very laid back hippie guy, but he's got a picture of Nixon.
Yeah, and he was protesting the Vietnam War actively in his past. And then what? He just ends up a roadie for Metallica, and he's perfectly comfortable having Nixon on his wall.
Yeah. To be clear, he did kind of qualify that Metallica were assholes. So
True.
Which I like a lot of their music, but I can get behind that statement.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, despite all his insistence on order and having things done in a specific way, Walter is very much a chaotic character.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, Walter really tends to make the dude's situation worse in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, maybe when you look at it when it all comes together, that actually did Walter make it worse for the dude? Yeah, arguably not. But at the same time, it was like the dude was just on this kind of thing. He's going to pass this money off, whatever. And whatever it may be. And Walter's kind of coming, no, we'll steal the money, and I'm going to throw my briefcase full of my dirty undies out the window, kind of thing. And like, and it's like, in a way, Walter is in a lot of ways making the dude's situation worse. Especially like you think of the scene where they go interrogate that school kid, and then Walter goes out there with a baseball bat and smashes up the wrong car.
Yeah.
I mean, this becomes kind of a trope throughout the whole movie, the dude's car.
Yeah.
Just gradually more and more gets smashed up throughout the movie. Until the sort of
and I love the fact
set it on fire.
Yeah.
They walk into the house, and the first thing they see is this kid's father is an iron lung. And they're still perfectly just like, yeah, we still want our money back, so we're still going to interrogate this high school kid. Like clearly, this is a kid with a bad background who's going to, get himself into some trouble.
Homework.
They don't give
yeah.
money.
I'm going to ask Jen, Jen's been very quiet for Jen,
I'm struggling to remember most of the movie. That's my problem.
Yeah, he's a helpful friend who inadvertently sabotages due to a flawed worldview, affecting his motives and actions.
I mean, I just maybe you said you'd watched it a long time ago. I mean, I don't know what your sort of whole take on it.
15, 16. Yeah, no, it'd be longer than that. It would have been within the first couple of years it came out was when I first and only ever saw it.
Mm.
So it's a long time ago. So yeah, we're talking nearly 20 years ago since I watched it.
Based upon what we've been saying today, would you be willing to give it another go?
Oh yeah, I just downloaded it.
And
I just found an online streaming service that I could watch it on.
I know it's on Rakuten TV because that's where I have it downloaded from.
Yeah.
So
I've got it. What's the deal with his landlord?
Oh man, he just he shows up a few times, and he just like
Marty, isn't it? Marty.
Yeah, he's just kind of this awkward, strange guy. He knocks on the door, and it seems like he's more invested in the dude being his friend than his tenant.
Yeah,
because
that's like the impression.
Yeah, it's like totally an afterthought that he's being paid rent. He's just like, please come to my dance club.
Please be my friend. And the dude's like, what? Yeah, well,
yeah. He's like,
shut the door.
And it's so weird. It's like he looks up to him as if he's some sort of, and again, he's dancing to the rite of spring. This guy has some like artsy intellectual investments, and for some reason he thinks the dude is the guy who is going to give him, the notes he needs to break through or whatever. Even though there's nothing about that character that would lead you to suspect that he would know what to say with something like that.
It's like an idolizing sort of thing where misplaced idolism.
Exactly. I think it comes from the fact that he's so laid back, and the guy's a landlord. How is he gonna have that sort of zen in his life? Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
it's always the quiet ones. Maybe that's what's going on in his head. It's always the quiet ones. This guy might.
Yeah, but it's like no matter how much you watch The Big Lebowski, you need to watch it again to try and get more at it, because it is a movie about it is like the perfect example of a movie about life, because it's like this it's a big juggle mess that you gotta kind of make what you can of it.
And I mean, like I said right at the beginning of the stream, that I think the first time you watch it, you may not get it, and sometimes it does. This film, I think, takes repeat viewings. I didn't get it the first time I watched it. Okay, there was a couple of funny scenes that made me chuckle, but I didn't really get it. And it was probably several years later that I tried to, I watched it again and a couple of more times. And the more I've watched it, it's like, yeah, this is a brilliant movie. This is just a absolute masterpiece of a movie.
And I know there are those who may be watching now and who might be watching in the future who are thinking that sounds a lot like Stockholm Syndrome. But
if you say that, I'm going to say one thing to you: this aggression will not stand, man.
well, I've got another one, and it's in the banner. That's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
More, the way I see it, it's more like an orange or something. You peel back that first layer, and then there's, or, it's like, or like, like one of those, fine, like a Where's Waldo book, where the more you look at it, the more little things pop out that you see.
I thought you started that, preface that with peel back your brain, and it's like, Don't know where my head was going. I think I'm half asleep. That's part of the problem.
What's so interesting too? It's a very colorful puzzle of a film, but interestingly enough, in an early draft of the script, it's basically said that the dude got his money from being an heir to the inventor of the Rubik's Cube, and so he has all of this fortune from Rubik's Cube. I think they cut that just because it seemed too strange and too complicated, but it would have worked as a really nice metaphor for what the film is, you know? It's just this really colorful, four-sided thing. You're trying to twist it and make sense of it. And you can have your algorithms to solve it quickly or whatever, but it's never going to suffice, you know, because when it comes down to it, it's just a pastime, you know, it's a movie. And I think that's something that the Coen brothers were kind of aiming for when they made it, as a film where it's just, here's us imagining our friends in these crazy scenarios. You know, that in a way it is the perfect slice of life film, because it really is just like, here's our buddies, what would they do if, you know, they ended up in this strange false kidnapping, case of mistaken identity involving, you know, nihilists and pornographers and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, my brain's starting to go.
One little comment about the character of Walter Sojak. What I find interesting about him is he is this perfect metaphor for the concept of deterritorialization from Charles Deleuze's philosophy, because what we have is somebody who does not belong to a tradition, who insists on clinging to it. And he maintains that, you know, he's part of this ancient tradition that has followed him all the way down, but then he completely he has no really reason to be there, and that perfectly follows into the thesis of the film. You know, there's all of these remnants of broken traditions that they all sort of follow, and ultimately they just have to be resigned to give it up.
And I remembered what I was gonna say. That thing about him being like the heir to the guy who invented the Rubik's Cube kind of makes more sense about, you know, how he lives than him just getting welfare.
Yeah, for real. It's like the dude doesn't seem like he's disabled or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even we're talking post Reaganomics America, where you're like, even if you're on welfare, you can't just go around bowling.
Yeah, no, especially in Los Angeles and the kind of apartment he has.
Yeah.
You know, like how are you affording all of this? You know, how are you affording all of these white Russians and all of this weed? Like, how's this happening?
Yeah.
It makes sense they drive such a junker car. Another thing that's interesting about the soundtrack is he goes on and on about his Creedence tapes and how he has all of this collection of Creedence's. You know, you kind of get the impression that he has the full discography on cassette. The only two songs that of Creedence in the film are both from Cosmos Factory. Like it seems like he just has the one that he listens to when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Oh, and the ending of the film is perfect. The ending of the film is it makes you so comfortable with the fact that you have seen so much random nonsense that, you know, adds up to nothing. You know, especially after Walter Sojak throws somebody who's legitimately disabled onto the floor, thinking he's a fake. You know, it's like the dude's a fake cripple in a way. You know, if he's living off of welfare in Reagan America, and you know, he is a little bit of a freeloader, but it's kind of part of what his charm, kind of what you love about him. But I just love the way it ends, where it's like the bowling alley is closing, so you get the sense that like here it's wrapping up, it's coming to an end, but the dude just got to, roll one last round. The dude abides, and Dead Flowers, Townes Van Zant's cover kicks in, and in a way, I almost wonder if they chose that because of Donnie, because it's a song about heroin. It doesn't really have much to do with the film, but the Townes Van Zant cover has this really mournful quality to it that the Stones original doesn't. And so I don't know. I think it's about coping with his death,
And I just thought of this now, and like another way to show, like another way that kind of shows that it's like a perfect just kind of slice of life, about life type of movie, is because a Shakespeare quote, describing life actually describes the movie perfectly. And first, Ilya 100% agrees with you. And the quote comes from Macbeth. I forget which act and scene, but it is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah. But anything else either of you would like to cover?
Not really. I am absolutely shocked by how little of the movie I remember. That's my real problem.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be
there's so much.
like that.
There's too much going on to ever be able to absorb in one viewing,
Yeah, I totally got that. As you guys went on, no, I don't remember that. Oh god, I can't remember the name of any of the actors. Not the actors. Anybody apart from the main cast. It's like, what the hell?
It's like David Thewlis is in a really small role in the film too. He shows up as like Maud's friend who's just giggling about everything they're saying the whole time. He's another
so
modern
now I'm gonna
artist.
have to look for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you eat the bar, sometimes the bar
eats you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Also, a happy birthday to Brainbug's wife and to Critical Cripple, a.k.a. Dave.
Yep.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. So, anyways, go ahead, give your, let's go ahead and do some closing thoughts.
I'm definitely going to watch the movie again. You guys have inspired me to watch it again and try and get some more out of it. And then I think I'm going to have a good talk with Jeff about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Watch it again. And I'm really regretting that I forgot about this and I didn't watch it again before.
I think Cretin's got like even more of an insight into all the potential meanings of this film than I have listening to him today. So, and I'll just say, I'll just say to anyone, if you wish to become an ordained Buddhist minister, it is free online. Just go on, apply. You're ordained. And So I mean, I know Chris is performing the Darth and Kent wedding at some point.
Yeah.
But obviously he'll definitely. But I could also offer my service as an ordained Buddhist minister as well if Chris is available. Sort of dear doodly beloveds, we're gathered here today.
Doodly beloved. That sounds like something else entirely.
But yeah, now you know why I scheduled this so Creighton could be on here, because
that knowledge base is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I was well into this. I thought I was well into this film, but you've seen it on some different levels that I haven't even sort of seen it on in certain ways. But
oh yeah, there's a time in my life when I would watch this to fall asleep every night, and then I would just put it back on as soon as the morning. Like it's just like the perfectly relaxed film, while also being
I'm
something
thinking of falling to sleep to it tonight. So.
I mean, I would also argue that in one of cases of one or two of the actors, it is their defining performance. You could argue that with Jeff Bridges, and I know he's won Oscars for other films, and John Goodman as well.
Stuff,
I mean, I definitely John Goodman. In my opinion, this is his finest performance. And I know people can bring up the Cloverfield sequel, which he was amazing, where he played the Doomsday.
Stupid.
The sequel.
Sorry, I've got no respect. Yeah. The sequel's all right, isn't it? Because the first one was crap.
There's a sequel in it. There's a sequel. I think
there's something rather.
I forget it. It's something 123 Cloverfield Street or something.
Street, yeah. Something like that.
John Goodman plays a Doomsday prepper, and he's really good in that. It's a bit more of a serious and dark role for John Goodman, but I would still say, to me, the Big Lebowski to me is his defining performance as an actor.
Yeah, for me, I'd say my favorite John Goodman performances. This would probably have to top it, but then very, very closely followed is his role in David Byrne's True Stories, and then another Coen Brothers film, Barton Fink, where he basically plays a devil kind of figure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, an interesting fact about that is John Goodman in a bunch of Coen Brothers films is always selling security. So like before Big Lebowski was Fargo, but just before that, I believe was Barton Fink. And Barton Fink, he plays an insurance salesman. Then in here, Walter Sojak sells home security technology. And then later in O Brother Where Art Thou, he sells the insurance of the soul and his Bible salesman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention his role as the Cyclops in O Brother Where Art Thou was great.
Minor role, but it's really significant to the film, especially when he comes back as one of the clan members in that sequence.
So, tune in on Sunday when we're talking about that.
Oh, yeah. And the Coen Brothers, they have a history of not only using the same actors, but, instilling little themes throughout. So another example is this is the end of a sequence of using Steve Buscemi in films, killing him, and they gradually make his remains smaller on screen as he dies. So, I'm trying to remember, before Fargo, it must have been in Barton Fink. I think he gets shot. And then in Fargo, he's being pushed through a wood chipper. And then this, you see his remains as ashes.
Yeah, well, I always think it's really weird because even though this is especially if it is kind of by a large part of fun film, it's really weird that in a sad way you're really sad to see the character Donnie die like that. Yet at the same time it leads to probably one of the best jokes in the film. When they're scattering his ashes, and Walter's obviously trying to scatter his ashes at sea and not throws it off the cliff, but the wind's blowing the other way and all the ashes blow all over the dude's face. It's just it's a classic joke. It's even though you're sad to see this character die, it's like
you have to have a receptacle.
Yeah, you have to have a receptacle. So they get they can't afford to earn at the Undertaker, so they go get like a big coffee jar to put Donnie's ashes into, and it's like it's like poor Donnie, even in death, he's just like the poor guy is he's not even given a dignified send off, poor guy. But it is one of the funniest jokes in the whole film as well.
It's a perfect example in both a literal and figurative sense of the Coens' dry, dark humor.
Yeah. So, closing thoughts?
Abide.
Jenny.
About it. Sorry?
Closing thoughts, Jenny?
The closing thoughts is I desperately need to watch it again.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Jenny. Sorry, I had to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen, I had to do that.
No. I mean, one other closing thought is that this has been a perfect example of how to make me shut up. Is just talk so intelligently about something that I knew so little about, and I didn't realize I knew so little about. Well done.
Okay. Well, you know, as I said earlier, message for life. Sometimes you bowl a strike, sometimes a spare, sometimes you bowl in the gutter, and sometimes someone will piss on your rug. But throughout the whole thing, try to remain dude. The dude abides.
And Ilya Moon has a closing thought as well.
Very true.
But okay, so
Yeah.
well, go ahead and move on to shilling. Creighton, as the the newest guest, do you have anything you want to shill?
Well, I'm about to start getting my writing career on the road, so yeah, just keep a lookout. I'm writing under the pen name Kaylur Kinwolf. That's Cynewulf, just like the old theologian. I am really influenced by like Flannery O'Connor and Franz Kafka and Cormac McCarthy, Jean Genet. I'm really into let's say like the plays of Eugene O'Neill. So if any of that stuff kind of strikes your fancy, keep a lookout for that.
Creighton, if you ever get time, I definitely think you should consider starting a YouTube channel. So I think you'd be really good.
Or at least appearing regularly on these.
Yeah.
I think, or at least try appear a bit more regular on these things first and see how you feel about it. Because I think you'd be really good, honestly. You know, you blow me away with this in this stream, honestly.
Oh, thank you. I love film analysis. I love the literary form and every way it appears. So, yeah, I'll get back into that.
Yeah. And Scummer, you got anything to shill?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I would. It's up on my channel now. It's an interview I conducted last night with. For those who are, say, fans of British indie music in the sort of 90s or so, I had Les Carter from the band Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine on my channel. I mean, that band had headlined Glastonbury at one time, which is a big deal because Glastonbury is a big festival. So I had him on for an interview last night. Please go check that out. I haven't got this 100% confirmed, but I'm hoping by the end of the week I'm going to have Ed, aka Grumpy Old Dude, on my channel. Now he's got an interesting story because he's a former white supremacist who's since left that and now speaks out against hate groups. So I really want to have a talk with him about his kind of journey. First of all, into and out of white supremacy, into what he does now. But I've got to say, I haven't got that 100% locked in. It's more penciled in at the moment. So I'm hoping. And on Sunday, I will be on another channel, Hissy's Hideaway. Ring, do you know her at all?
Yep. Yeah, she's my better half.
Yeah, you better. We obviously people probably know this already. Hissy and I have been collaborating over the last couple of months on the where we're going through the Asterix comics and sort of doing breakdowns there, but also looking at some of the actual history of the Roman Empire at the same time. I don't have a time for that yet. I've got to liaise with Hissy because I'm not sure if she's working this weekend or not, but it should be coming at some point this Sunday. And I know Jen has spoken very highly of those streams that we do. I know Jen's a fan.
I love them.
Yeah,
I
they're
very
good.
They're probably like some of the least watched streams I've done. In all honesty, yet they're honestly some of the things I've enjoyed making the most. I do honestly feel they're underrated.
Yeah,
I highly suggest. Sorry, but the Asterisk animated series. I have this tape of the Asterisk and Cleopatra version.
Oh yeah,
really excellent stuff.
We've done the book Asterix and Cleopatra. At some point, Hissy and I are going to do a review of some of the films and so on. We have talked about that, but we're kind of going through the books at the moment. Thing with the films is it's kind of there's kind of copyright issues, obviously.
Yeah,
we're trying to think we do it as a watch party or what.
We're problems with the books the other week.
We had an issue with YouTube.
Yeah, said a certain word that YouTube didn't like.
Yeah, and I got to say, I think it was something your other half said.
Yeah.
Which of course, YouTube's algorithm doesn't understand nuance.
Yeah.
They heard maybe 2 or 3 words in a sentence they didn't like and were like, oh, they struck us. However, I did get the stream back and it's up there. And that was
something you finished it.
And then we finished it last week. So I believe it's Asterix the Legionary, I believe, our next book we're doing. So that'll be on Hissy's channel some point this Sunday, but I need to liaise with Hissy on exactly what time yet. So just be on the lookout for it.
And Jen?
I've got a second part to that huge, great big long stream I did on Saturday about J.K. Rowling and her bigotry. We're actually going into detail in a couple of the points because we sort of had to rush out at the end because we got the stream up to 3 hours, which is a ridiculous length of time for a stream. So that'll be at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. I've also got my video on female masturbation coming out, which I was going to be recording tonight, but I forgot we were doing this stream. So. And of course, Dave now called me earlier because he needed more bodies on the chairs for his stream. So I'll be recording that tomorrow.
By the way, so Ilias just kind of reminded me that I will be on her and Punchy's channel again sometime soon as well. So
cool
for that. So
aside from that, I've got a couple of other things in the works, but they can wait to be told about.
Yeah. And as always, Saturday I've got secular/atheist D&D, where the party's gonna get ready to continue on past Lake Town. And then on Sunday, we will have Media Musings as regularly scheduled, and we will be discussing. Can't talk. We will be. Well, that's Jen's job.
Yeah, I didn't do it tonight. This stream has been very mild.
Yeah,
it's probably like the least crude you've ever been on the stream, Jen.
It's also probably the quietest I've ever been on a stream where I've actually been in the stream the whole time.
Yeah. But we will be discussing "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" And coming up in the middle of next month will be a stream on Les Mis, it will be either the Sunday before or the Sunday after Bastille Day. And aside from that, I have ideas ready to film. It's just, it's the streams are basically what I can do, though I'd be happy to pop up on someone else's channel if we can schedule it.
Cool.
Yeah. And Creighton, any taglines?
I don't know. I said the dude above.
And Scummer?
Well, for this stream, it'd be like the dude abides for this one.
And remember, don't choke on the indoctrination. Bye.
Salute.
Bye.